Here's the sound we're going to make. If I reduce the filter cutoff, we get a plucky bass sound. This sound uses a couple stock audio effects from my DAW, overdrive, and amp, an amplifier simulator. Let's get started. The key to this sound is the wavetable. I'll show you how to make it using Vital's built-in wavetable editor. Start by lowering oscillator 1 down an octave. Then let's open the wavetable editor and clear it. We will use a couple wavetable layers to make this sound. There are 3 types of layers. Wave sources let you draw in waveforms by drawing straight lines between grid points, or if there are no grid lines, drawing a waveform by hand. It also lets you set the amplitude and phase of the harmonics directly. Line sources lets you draw in waveforms using curves. Finally, the audio file source allows you to load in an audio file to create a wavetable. You can stack these layers to modify each other, and add modifiers to each layer to warp its waveform. We'll use the wave source and line source types. Start by removing the existing wave source at the bottom like this. Now add a line source. Using this mode, you can click and drag on the line centers to bend the curves, or double-click to add or remove points. Set the first half of the waveform to be completely flat at 0. Set the number of grid lines in the X direction to the max of 16. Now add a few triangles that start narrow and gradually widen, as shown here. Make sure the waveform starts and ends at 0. Here's what it sounds like so far. Now, add a second layer and select wave source. This will be used to modify the lines we just created. Before we continue, you may have noticed the diamonds in each row. These are called keyframes. Keyframes are points in the wavetable where we can configure settings the way we like it. If there is more than one keyframe in a row, the settings will be interpolated between them so that the waveform blends smoothly between them, depending on the selected blending mode. Make sure the keyframe next to the wave source is selected, so we don't accidentally modify the wrong thing. We want to add a sine wave at double the frequency, where we see 2 cycles in the window. This is easily done by adding a bar on the 3rd slot or 2nd harmonic right here. If you close the editor to get a better look, you can see that the first half of the waveform is a sine wave like we want, but the second half isn't right. We can fix that by going back to the wave source and removing the second half of the waveform. Go back into the editor and zero the second half by drawing it in like this. Now you can see that the second half of the waveform is fixed. However, we would like it to be more rounded than the triangle shape we already have. Go back into the editor and add a modifier to the line source containing the triangle shapes. Select Wave Warp and make sure the keyframe next to it is selected. Adjust the Y-warp value until the triangles become more rounded and sine-like. Now we're making progress. Let's add some movement to our wavetable. Double-click to add a second keyframe for the Wave Warp modifier and slide it to the end. The wavetable position can be changed by clicking and dragging along the top. Slide the marker to the end and select the second warp wave keyframe. Go to the X warp setting and adjust it until the right of the waveform gets squashed towards the center like this. Now when you play a note and slide the wavetable position marker, you can see the shape change and hear the sound morph. We're now done making the wavetable, so you can close the editor. If you find these videos useful, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. It helps me out a lot. Let's use an envelope to modulate the wavetable position. Go to envelope 2, give it a short decay and no sustain. Apply envelope 2 to the wavetable position and adjust the modulation amount until it sounds good. To me, it sounds best if you start at the top of the waveform and then modulate the wavetable position downwards as the note is played. It'll look like this. Since this will be a bass, reduce the number of voices to 1 to prevent more than one note being played at a time and making it sound bad. Go to the Effects tab and enable some distortion. Leave it on soft clip and increase the drive. Turn down the master volume as needed. Let's also add a compressor to give the attack a little more punch. Change the compressor to single band mode and increase the attack knob all the way. I'm going to leave the other settings alone, but feel free to adjust. If you want to add even more punch, try adding envelope 2 to the distortion's drive knob. I'm going to remove that because it's a little too much for what I'm wanting. Now let's add a low-pass filter. Turn on filter 1. Set envelope 3 to have an even quicker delay, no sustain. Apply it to the filter cutoff and turn down the modulation amount. Turn down the filter resonance. Turn key tracking all the way up so that the filter cutoff increases when the pitch gets higher in order to preserve the sound. Let's rename Macro 1 to Tear and apply it to the filter cutoff. Adjust the filter cutoff and modulation amount so that when the macro is turned all the way down, you get a nice bassy pluck sound, and when turned all the way up, you get a strong tearing bass. Finally, if you want to boost the sound a bit, add an overdrive and an amp simulator on top of Idle. I'll use the stock plugins in Ableton for this. Turn down the dry-wet amount on the overdrive, and configure the amp simulator to use its bass guitar settings with the low dry-wet setting. The sound can change quite a bit based on small changes of the wavetable and the envelope, so play around with it until you get it where you want it. If you'd like to learn more, check out the video on the left, or if you're interested in bass sounds, check out the playlist on the right. If you have any requests, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.